I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You remain standing. Dennis is going to open us with prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the God-giving rain over the past day. We look to you for your wisdom and guidance as we make decisions to impact the town. We thank you for the democracy that we're in, and we ask for the protection of those protecting our democracy. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from October 2nd?
Motion to approve the minutes from October 2nd.
We have a second.
Second.
Was that you, John?
Yes.
Okay, John and John. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5 affirmative. Do we have a motion to approve and ratify the fund report and docket for tonight?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by John Purdy.
Second.
Second by Dennis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. Okay, jump right into old business. Property and liability insurance. John.
Mayfield Insurance, I think, has gotten this quote back. It sounds like maybe it was incomplete, didn't include the cyber protection.
Right.
I think I understand. In full disclosure, they sent it to me. I haven't even opened it. I've been slammed at work. But I think they said it was about a 20% savings overall?
I don't know percentage. I know there was a savings there. So they originally gave me a quote. I kind of had it compared. They changed a few things and things like that, but 20% would sound about right.
Okay. But I think you felt like it's not a complete quote yet until the cyber gets layered
Correct.
in.
Yeah, and I submitted that application, I believe it was last week sometime. We actually had Corey did some updates to our cybersecurity, added some 2-factor authentication and things like that. So it made our Microsoft score or something like that went up,
Right.
which actually should benefit that. I also contacted Epic to tell them we made those changes. She said once everything's done, let them know, and they may be able to even update what we're paying currently.
Good.
Good. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. I would hope maybe by the end of the week we see something.
Okay, and I see Dean once every week or 10 days anyway, so if it hasn't come, I'll mention it to him, just to make sure it's on his radar. But out of curiosity, how much time does it take you to work through with somebody like Mayfield just to get a quote?
So I could say I probably bounce back and forth 2 to 3 times a week, emails. I don't know that I can put too much time to it, but probably 2 to 3 times conversations via email since basically that introduction was made. I think now it may be a little more civil because I've got all the declaration pages now and all that stuff from the other insurance company, so I'm able to send those directly over. Before they would send me what they wanted, then I'd have to get with Epic. They'd give me all the information that I needed and send it over so that we made sure we compared apples to apples. Headache, but
Well, part of the reason I ask, I think everybody's seen Angela has maybe somebody that might provide a third quote. You know, if you said, gosh, it took me 3 days, 8 hours a day to gather what they needed, which wouldn't necessarily shock me. I mean, they've got to know details of every building, every vehicle, everything.
right.
But if it's not a heavy lift, number one, 20% off a $100,000 bill is pretty significant. So, I think it's something we need to consider action on. But if it's easy enough to get a third quote, I probably would like that.
I think the biggest thing is going to be if it's just really giving them those declaration pages.
Right.
If it's going to be having to go through and walk around through all the property stuff, that's where it became the first time with Epic when we really nailed down to add in all the extra stuff. It took us a little longer. It was more of a headache just because a lot of in-person meetings. I would hope they would be able to do the same thing as Mayfield and just kind of take those declaration pages and we have to answer a few questions.
And when this all started, I talked to Mayfield and I talked to Morgan, And it seems like Morgan said, given the markets, they really wouldn't be able to quote because we'd already been exposed to all the different agencies
Yes.
or insurance companies they could quote.
Right.
So, go ahead.
There was another company, Walker.
Oh, Walker Hughes.
Yeah,
Walker Hughes. Yeah.
Dwayne and I actually met with him in person. He kind of almost acted the same way as Morgan said. He's like, you know, I really can't give you a quote. He says, you know, you really need to just pick a broker based off of those and then go out and look for insurance. It's kind of what he had said. So I felt they really weren't willing to give us a quote at this moment in time. And then with working with Mayfield, you know, it was close to getting a quote. I kind of just put them on the back burner.
Okay.
So.
What personally, I think what makes sense is we need to finish getting a complete quote, which will include the cyber, which I don't think is going to move. From what I remember of that coverage, it wasn't immensely expensive, so I wouldn't think that would change the picture much. And maybe, you know, expose to the agency that Angela knows, and if they can quote or if they can't quote, then at least we can all look at each other and say, hey, we went to 4 different places, and this is what we found that is the best for the town.
Right. One thing I will say is, and this is stuff I haven't really got into with Mayfield yet, but I also think we need to make sure we look at some of the other things. Like, I'm sure that these other companies offer it as well, but some of the stuff that whenever John Parmalee took over with Epic, we didn't know was even available to us. You know, all this, the different resources that they're providing us now with OSHA, the OSHA 10-hour class to make sure we've got all our OSHA classes and stuff up to date, which we weren't because we didn't really know we had to have all that.
Right.
They're sending us, there's a program that they have that they send out to all our guys via email, and it's got training once a month and all just different things like that. They've got other HR type resources and things like that. So I'd like to look into talking with Mayfield a little bit about that as well, what kind of stuff they offer, because it really has seemed to help us on making sure we're staying compliant on our hours and things like that. So
Okay, no, I think that's valid. And that, so if you, I guess maybe want to follow up with them while we're waiting on that quote. Yeah, no, I think it all makes sense.
so
Okay. Anything else? Any insurance? Questions?
I would just add, I think, because David Wheatley talked to me, we did leadership talks at county together, and he reached out to me. I didn't know he was doing that now. But he said he would like an initial meeting, so I don't know if that would be problematic.
no.
So yeah, if you want to pursue that, I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt anything.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
At least find out whether, I mean, we may be in the same boat as we were with the other two. Well, if
Right.
I only have this handful I can quote from, and you may find that out, but it's worth a meeting anyway, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. We're gonna jump around a little bit. Is this Adam? Hi, Adam. We're gonna let him do the presentation on the physical plan, because I know he's got somewhere he needs to be in short order, so, we're gonna go ahead and, because I think there were some questions, and I'll let Lee take off with this and kind of see where we're at.
So you all have this fiscal plan. It is a requirement of annexation of any property into the town, but we're looking in this case uniquely at that 160 acres northwest of Sawmill Whiteland. Adam was asked to and has moved at an extraordinary pace and been very accommodating to get for us what we need within the timetable that we needed it. And it provides you with some illustration of what benefits the town would derive economically from annexing the territory and what additional costs we might have, and to try to net that all out and see if it makes sense or not. I think some of you may have questions. I feel pretty certain John Purdy has some questions, and I think it's important to understand how our tax levy is calculated every year and what it means to what we receive in tax revenue to have additional grant brought in. Adam can explain that a lot better than I can. So with that, have at it.
I know you had questions, so
Oh,
if you
yeah.
wanna
Yeah,
start
Couple
with a
of-
question, that gives Adam some
Well, and maybe a couple things that I think maybe are typos. Page 11, it talks about trash, our trash utility. We don't have one. Next page, page 12, emergency medical services. It says we're covered, this ground's covered by Whiteland. It would be covered by Whiteland when we're done. That's a typo. It would be covered by New Whiteland after we're done. That's at the top of page 12.
I think that meant ambulance service.
Oh, emergency medical? Well, it says Whiteland Fire.
Right.
We'd still be
They
Whiteland
ha-
Fire
they
Protection, so
haven't-
that's EMS?
I believe so. Is that,
Okay, and it may very well be accurate, it just caught my eye.
yeah.
Okay. The primary question I have has to do with the property. I understand the utility revenue, I think, anyway, based on what's in here. I was really surprised at the property tax revenue that would come to us. It came to $38,000 a year when this thing's mature. We're gonna spend $200,000 on police officers, we're gonna spend another 50 on additional fire. I look at it and think, okay, this feels like developments, I'm pro-development, there's no question about it, but this feels like it's development that's gonna cost us money rather than generating additional funds for the town. Have I misunderstood that?
No, and I think it's a common misconception. The easiest way I can explain it is everything you described makes sense prior to property tax legislation. Property tax legislation, specifically the levy growth aspects of that, make it to where growth doesn't have an immediate change on the town's revenue as much as the levy growth quotient does. So the state's annual determination of how much your levy can grow is really what it dictates how much property tax you can bill within your municipal territory for the ensuing year. So that is historically has been based on the trailing 6 years of non-farm payroll average. So the practical example would be whether or not you get 500 more homes or not, your levy can grow by the maximum growth rate next year. That's one way to think about it. So then when you put that kind of frame over this neighborhood, you have a situation where you have X number of new homes, new property taxes are actually being paid, right? There's actually new receipts, which means that everyone else's tax rate goes down to neutralize that amount of money. So they're paying sort of towards that overall levy number. So in other words, the other existing homesteads don't have to pay as much, and that's why the tax rate actually typically falls when AV goes up.
So you're saying the total levy, if I understand, the total levy we can collect is set.
Correct.
Then it's spread over a larger number of properties, and therefore the average comes down?
Yes, sir, quite precisely. And this is for, the terminology is like levy controlled funds, but the best working analogy I personally have come up with is an HOA deal. So if Lee and I are a two property association, and it costs us $500 a year to maintain property, that's what it costs. And then the only way that cost goes down is if we get more, homes in the association. So that's sort of how it works, is that the maximum levy is a fixed number, and then it's allocated out based on the number of sort of the assessed value that's in the community.
That maximum levy, though, when we add 400 houses, when we add a significant improvement to property value, that maximum levy doesn't automatically change?
Correct.
Now, I read, there were some things in here I really didn't understand about how we ought to work on our levy.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so there are the maximum levy, so let's define some terms. Levy is I'm just gonna give you some of my practical terminology. These aren't any of the code definitions, but practical. Levy is defined as the maximum amount of property tax that can be billed or levied on properties in the budget year, okay? And that is a independent number than the number of homes or any of those kind of things. And it grows by that state growth quotient that you get as part of your budget process. That's why, like, for example, we know precisely next year, in 2025, your maximum levy can increase no more than 4%, regardless if this neighborhood is here or not. Okay, it's a fixed number that can increase. your specific question, there are some ways that the maximum levy can be appealed from time to time and requested to be a different number than that 4% growth. And a couple of those examples would be annexation, consolidation, assessed value growth in excess of the 3-year average, and mathematical error or financial emergency. Those are ways that you can statutorily appeal the maximum levy to get a permanent adjustment to that maximum amount based on those sort of criteria. So what I suggested in our plan, there's really two that I think this annexation and this development, if it goes through as it's projected, there's two that I think would be a possibility. One would be the 3-year assessed value growth appeal. The assessed value from this new neighborhood may be enough to say that to trigger that the town's 3-year average assessed value growth is higher than the 3-year average state of Indiana communities growth, okay?
And not to interrupt you, that would have to be the 3 years that follow, or 3 years
trailing.
backwards? So we could potentially do that
2 years
today?
from now. Yeah, no, it would be, so this year's appeal was from assessed value, the 3 years trailing, 22, 23, 24. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry to interrupt. Go.
No, you're fine. So that's one that I definitely think you should monitor. The second would be annexation. So there is specific appeals that can be done on the annexation front. There's a lot of criteria there, and we haven't really fully unpacked that. That would be the other one that I think is a candidate. So both of those, I would highly encourage, and probably put it in the report, that the amount of assessed value that can be created unappealed, all that's going to do is it'll make it to where the levy does not change, the tax rate will actually fall because there will be the same levy, larger assessed value.
Right.
Which
Well,
benefits existing homes, existing properties, yeah.
Yeah.
is what you're saying would happen. If we appeal that levy now, we'd effectively be raising taxes on all of us and everyone in the town.
Correct. Yeah, but a lot of the times what you're trying to do is maintain the tax rate. You're trying to keep the tax rate relatively consistent and not large decreases over time.
Well, and this is, I'm probably speaking in ignorance because I'm sure there's angles of this that haven't occurred to me. The town government is not financially struggling. I'd hate to say we're going to appeal this levy so we can raise taxes. I don't think we need to raise taxes.
Right.
At least at this moment in time. Maybe
Right.
again, maybe you got.
I agree with you, because I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, if and when this development goes in, then that would be the time,
Once it's mature.
yeah, or at least partially mature, to step back, and then the revenues would increase, but what you and I and everyone else pays would not increase. It would be spread over.
If the levy went up, though, it would.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the couple other things is these are all due by October 21st as part of the upcoming budget year. So this year's, they're done. So it is an annual determination and it's an annual qualification, but you can get locked out. So my suggestion as a best practice is that as part of your budget process going forward, you review that and just see if at any given time in the town's future, if it is beneficial to the town to pursue
Right.
one of those appeals.
Right. This is probably an unfair question that you can't answer. So the neighborhood goes in, it's fully mature, they're all there, they're all paying taxes. Can you estimate what the people that have been here already, percentage-wise, our taxes might fall? I
could get fairly close to that. I don't want to spitball it because I don't want to be wrong, but I could send a sort of supplement or an estimate on that based on the projections we have.
I'd be curious about that, and I realize that's probably not a direction
Would
we
it
would
be
go, but it would
meaningful?
help me understand. I think it would be meaningful to me.
Well, but
No,
I mean,
I think he
I
means
get
the
you can't give
amount.
us a number, it's not fair to ask, but would you expect it to be an amount of money that people would
Oh, I'm
notice and
sorry.
appreciate?
I'm sorry.
Right.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, a meaningful amount, not symbolic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Darn it, Lee.
Steady, John.
I think so, because the total neighborhood value, if built out fully, is a relatively meaningful percent of the town's existing net assessed value. So I
Right.
think it would move the numbers, is a way to consider that. Now, I would also strongly encourage that the way, and again, I know that this is an annexation and a fiscal plan, and the appeal is really not even on the table. While I have your audience, I would say that I would highly encourage annually that you do sort of take that under advisement, because those are point in time appeals. And if the community 20 years from now needs that money and it was not appealed, and when it was a qualifying window, that money's gone. So some of the times we have seen when communities go through rapid growth and they don't maintain that tax rate, what sometimes ends up happening is farther down their life cycle, the tax rate is very low, their need for services is very high. So I just want to kind of suggest that the way the state has enabled this through the process is it is very much an annually point in time window.
And I'm not suggesting that even I'd be in favor. I mean, I'm in favor of low taxes, but I wouldn't be in favor of saying we're going to build all this, watch everybody's taxes go down and sit still. I don't think that would make sense. But I would be curious. Really what I'm looking for is just get me in the zip code. This is what it would mean for each homeowner. You know, I think we've all seen our property taxes skyrocket. Through that process, I've assumed the town would benefit more than it apparently is going to.
I think we can get you really like a good estimate.
Just a ballpark. I mean, if it takes you more than a half an hour, then don't do it.
No,
But
I think we can do it.
okay, yeah, I'd be curious. And again, I don't think that's a path even I'd want to go down, but
Yeah, I think what you described, generally we recommend as a best practice, flat to maybe trending lower tax rates, but not big spikes either way. Not big spikes up, not big spikes down. That's like the most fiscal, sustainable option, is sort of either really kind of steady, predictable, maybe slightly decreasing over time. That's a sign of a growing community, which is a good metric, but we just don't want big spikes up or down. We want it to be kind of predictable.
I think for better or worse, we've all seen some pretty big spikes in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But, so the triggering events again were 3-year average increase. There was emergency. What was the third one?
Consolidation, appeal, mathematical error, fiscal emergency, 3-year growth appeal.
Okay.
Did you get annexation?
Yeah. Okay.
Good for right now?
Yeah, and this is probably not a discussion for tonight, and not a discussion that really involves you. The more I sit with this subdivision, I think the less I like it. And really the primary thing, there's been some things that in my opinion are written in stone that we have to have, at least in my opinion, I'm one vote. One of those is a second entrance into the townhomes, a street entrance, not an emergency entrance. There's some other things, the path, some other things that I'd say, these are a must-have for me. But, you know, up until this point, I've thought this is going to mean a financial boon to the town. It's really not. It's going to mean an expense until and unless we do one of these appeals. Given that, I don't really like the setup of this subdivision. I don't like the lot widths. I don't like that granted, we don't have as in-depth or detailed zoning laws or zoning regulations as other towns, but we do have some. These really are putting those on the shelf and blowing them out and saying, we're literally going to cram as many lots into this as we possibly can. I really don't like that personally. You know, again, up until now, I've thought this will mean a financial windfall for the town. It really won't. In that light, I think we should probably be patient. And in my opinion, we should be patient and get what we want. And I'm not at all against development. And I'm not at all. I want to see the town grow. I want to see it expand. But again, if there's not that significant benefit to us, then I look at the subdivision and think, I put myself 5 years down the road after this is mature and think what it's going to look like, because I've seen other neighborhoods like this, and I don't think we're going to like the way it looks.
I think you need to talk more about that. I'm sensitive to
Right.
Adam needing to get on his way. But before he goes, and part of what we have on our agenda down here is more conversation about this. But
Right.
while we have him here, the other economic piece is the effect that this would have on our sewage works, on our wastewater utility. And you're right, there's not going to be this windfall in additional tax revenue, but there are some positive financial gains to be realized by the utility. When we think about, we have capacity already built into that's not being utilized. We've paid for it, it's there. It's like inventory on the shelf, right?
Which is the point.
And we don't really have anybody else that's beating down our door to buy it. And so it is an opportunity to collect sewer availability fees and add those customers that would be the customer base over which the cost of operation and maintenance of that utility would be spread. And so if that's of interest and you want to ask Adam to comment on that or ask questions of him, let's seize this opportunity while we have him here.
Right.
I have a question, because John and I had a conversation the other night, and I was kind of the same thing. I looked at that $38,000, it's like, okay, that's about half a police officer, okay? The numbers that you put in there, as the statistics that you put in, that said that based on that addition, we would need to add 2 police officers. Are those generalizations? I mean, because the way I look at that, okay, if I've got Officer Smith out there patrolling, it's gonna add maybe 10 minutes to his entire shift to go through that neighborhood. It's not like it's way out somewhere, it's some big, so in essence, it could be 5-6 years down the road before we need to add another officer. My concern, I guess, as far as the first responders would be more the fire department, as far as, because they're stretched on runs right now. When you add 400 more homes, that could influence them more so than I said the police department. So.
No, excellent question. If you all have the copy, if you jump to page 27.
27?
27, you're 100% right. These business plans, this is an appraisal or an estimate. You know, it's a projection of the likelihood. And I'll show you, it's all based on the neighborhood could build out faster or slower. You know, the population could be higher or lower, right? All that stuff has kind of a domino impact. But we try to be conservative. We also try to not, I think, Matt and Dwayne have been excellent, by the way, very responsive. We also try to press. One of the questions we ask is, in 5 years, what could go wrong at this name? And what came out in that conversation, we incorporate some of those as, we try to de-risk that so that we can get to this conversation. Because these are estimates, but I want to show you where there's sensitivity. So did everybody get to page 27? Okay, so the projected is the government-wide, town-wide. That's your police, fire, street, and utilities. And on the balance, it is positive. Okay, so over a 4-year period of time, 100% built out of the neighborhood, it is a positive ledger, a positive benefit to the town, town-wide. The next table, I popped the hood, figure of speech there a little bit, to say that we have different functions of government. We have utilities and we have governmental activities. What you'll see is almost all, or actually all of the positive benefit right now is estimated to be on the utility side because they have a bunch of new customers. It makes total sense, right? To go back to the initial question that you had around the tax revenues, they work more cause and effect. New customers, there's incremental revenues, that makes sense, right? So that is pretty scientific, and the only debate there would be like, do those houses come online as scheduled, okay? And do they use the same, flows that we're anticipating? The governmental side is where we start to say, will we estimate X new officers and X new street? That is very fungible, and one of the things, a lot of that cost is on the public safety. So as you get into this neighborhood, if you could defer that, right, that number looks a lot better, to your point, okay? What I didn't want to do is not have that in there, show that the governmental is also very positive, and you proceed thinking that this is a complete slam dunk, and get into a situation in the 2026 budget, and all of a sudden you get surprised with a new head count or something as a result. So this isn't trying to lay out a 4-year plan, it's just trying to give you an appraisal of, hey, these are where there's some sensitivities to this thing, and clearly in the first 4 years, it's gonna be the public safety impacts that are gonna impact the ledger on the governmental side, and it's gonna be the customer count on the utility side. As you have continued conversations and can work through that, the more precision you can get on those estimates, you're gonna be in good shape. And if you can defer the public safety, that's only gonna buy you time. The one thing that was a positive, when I first was looking at this, was actually really concerned with the leaf and limb. I don't really know why, it must be top of mind in other projects. And that is one that is gonna have a long tail, because these are gonna be young, new trees, so there's not gonna be a lot of street impact. So we actually sized that estimate down, but we left the public safety estimate in there just because we know right now statewide there's just a shortage and it's a strain on everybody. So we wanted to at least make sure we weren't being overly optimistic there.
Let me ask you a question about what you just said. At the top of page 27, you talk about the primary beneficiary of this being the utilities initially. You know, you've got a projected revenue of $2 million, projected expense of $1.6 million, and a net of $412,000. And on the face of it, I feel pretty good about that. But in the $2,049,000, a little more than $1 million, almost $1.1 million of that is tap-in fees that are one time and then they're gone. They don't repeat. And really, I'm looking to be educated by everybody here. What you've recommended is we set that $1 million aside because this development largely is going to tap out our wastewater treatment plant, and we're going to need that money to expand. Here's my ignorance. Is $1 million meaningful enough to say we're going to add 20% for the next subdivision? It's going to be more than $1 million, isn't it?
I mean, if you really go through and look at it, I would say when they do their capacity study, you know, they're looking at it as a percent basis when they do these availability fees. So, you know, if they're taking 20%, you know, it probably takes about $1 million, you know, to get that 20% or so, is what I would assume.
So you're thinking $1 million would be enough to add a 20% capacity to our plant?
That's how I would take it, Lee. I mean, that's how I think those numbers are derived on when they do those studies. They look to see, okay, well, this is how much this is going to take. This is how much, you know, that's.
And in your case,
go ahead.
well, no, and in your case, it's not so much about treatment capacity as it is storage, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Right now, I mean, treatment wise, I mean, based on the capacity study, I probably could treat 3 times what we have. It's just
So it's cheap. I'm sorry. So it's cheap expansion because you're building basins or tanks to hold more of the wastewater, but you have the plant to treat it.
Right.
That's what would be really expensive.
yeah. I think they
Right.
in the capacity study they said basically we would need, you know, we would need more surface area basically for capacity.
Equalization basin, is that what they call that?
I can see you could go by that.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. But like I say, I just don't want to get bound up in feeling like, well, there's $400,000 in 4 years. That looks pretty good.
Right.
That's a one hit and you're done. That's not going to be the next 20, 25, 30 years that we're all going to be living.
Right.
But it's interesting to me. Thank you for educating me that we could potentially build enough capacity for the next subdivision with that $1 million.
Right.
And I realized eventually you run out of that treatment capacity, and then $1 million isn't near enough for the next
Right.
place.
And I wonder too, factored into that, would you spend $1 million of your own money to do that project? Or if you have low interest, like we've been accustomed to for a while now, 2.5%, 3% money from state revolving fund that you spread over 20-year amortized term, you know, in some cases 30, but probably something like this for that amount of money, you wouldn't have maybe more than 20 years or whatever, and look at what you would have to add to rates to be able to finance that debt and keep this money aside for other replacement costs, you know, So I don't, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts.
And we're 4 or 5 steps down the line.
We
I just
are,
want to make sure I
but-
understood what you were communicating, that looks like a real winner. Well, it's not really.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. There's one times in there that
Right.
are gonna fall
Right.
That's
off
right.
by
Yeah.
your 5 days.
Right, thank you.
And kind of to enter another question, so if just going by calculations in my head, our average sewer rate, I believe, is like $42 is the average. Multiply that by the 427, that ends up being about an additional $215,000 a year in monthly bills. That wouldn't be your
Right.
I guess your availability fees. You're
Which is-
roughly about $215,000 a year more to the utilities, with not adding any capacity. Basically, we're not having to spend really any more money because we've already built that capacity in.
Right, maybe some personnel costs,
Right.
but so the $42, is that sewer only or that storm as well? You can tell I don't pay the bills in my house.
Sewer only is
Okay,
so.
And is it right to say too, Matt, that, you know, I think of this treatment capacity, like, you know, like inventory that we have on the
Right.
shelf, but we don't have anyone to sell it to.
right,
We have this ground in the middle of what is now New Whiteland. And I think you may have said, John, you know, then when we need to provide it that service, that treatment to the next subdivision, I don't know where that next subdivision comes from.
I mean, I guess there's always that chase to go out west. Like
Well,
we talked before, I know
but that's
it's-
I know, but to go out west, we're annexing ground
Correct.
and bringing it into town that is more
it
remote
does the same thing again.
than what we have right here.
Right,
And we're counting on being able to grab it before those other municipalities that are gobbling up everything around us get their paws on it. And so, I'm not trying to talk you into this, I'm not. I want to make sure we get the full benefit of what Adam's trying to provide in this report. But I wonder whether if we don't sell this inventory for this ground, we won't have another customer to sell it to.
we may.
And so then you say, well, we have this potential that we're never ever realizing, or we're not ever converting into any benefit. Okay, well, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. But if your goal is, if we've got inventory, we want to sell the inventory, and we have a customer to sell it to, but this may be the only customer who ever comes along. Does that factor into your decision?
My struggle with that, and you're right, and I get your point, my struggle with that is we're gonna sell that inventory, but we gotta add 2 cops, and we gotta add the support, and we gotta add, it doesn't feel like it's a wash to me, let alone a gain. Unless we go back and redo the levy, which, well, I don't like the way that feels, I think our taxes are high enough already. But I realize there may come a time where we have to do something like that.
But the levy is the total amount of tax you collect
I know.
for the whole,
I know.
not, it's not directly, it's not what each person's paying.
No, I get that.
Okay.
It's a total property value. Yeah, no, I get that. Or essentially, it's a plug number.
It is the product of the rate times the
Right.
assessed value.
And the only way we get our levy to go up is to make that appeal.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is at this moment in time, well, I'd hate to make that, could we? Maybe. Could we justify it? I don't know if we've had 3 years we probably haven't had 3 years of growth. Maybe we're not in a position to do that levy now, but I wouldn't want to.
think so. Yeah.
Well, but that was why I asked him the question of whether the 2 cops and all that was generalization, because even with the conversation you and I had, because we were on the same page with that, I don't think at this point, looking at our department, one of the reasons we've had to add officers in the past, and this is one of the things Lee and I were talking about just a minute ago, we had guys on the department that had 5 and 6 weeks vacation, and you had all this other stuff, and we had people being off, and we needed more people to cover that stuff. We have nobody like that now. And so that's why I was asking Adam, is this something that is a generalization that we need 2 more,
Right,
and
sure.
that we can go, okay, it might be 6 years before we need to add 2, or even 1. And if we do, that's just part of growth.
And again, I'm not being argumentative.
No.
Do you think that would be the outcome? Because I'm not sure it would. You know, when you talk about cops, number one, they're running around the town patrolling traffic.
Yep.
Traffic's going to increase. They're making calls to people's houses, whether it be a police emergency or a fire emergency, any EMS emergency, the cop's going to come too. We're going to go from, how many houses are in town now? 2,200?
Something like that.
We're going to add 400 more. That's a significant percentage. Those runs are going to go up by that significant percentage too. So I wonder if we could reasonably say, we're going to wait 4 years, 5 years to add police officers. I think we'd have Joe Ryan sitting in here barking up our tree.
One of the things that I would say about that is the life cycle of a neighborhood. Okay. I believe typically you would have 4 to 5 years because the population that originally would move into that neighborhood would begin to change over time. I'm not sure that, and somebody can correct me, especially somebody who's in the first responders and all of that. It seems to me like new neighborhoods have less traffic than, those that begin to age. Now that's an assumption on my part.
Does that make sense?
I guess I don't fully understand what you're saying, but.
Well, I've seen Tracy Ridge actually, because we're on a rise again, because it was a new neighborhood, it had lived its life cycle. I came in, it was still going fairly well. Then we had kind of a change, especially because of the rental properties, getting bought up into there. So the clientele began to move back and forth. Then we have dealt with people who have passed away in the neighborhood or moved to other residences. We're getting young families back, okay? And so our rate of calls, I know for a fact, has gone down in my neighborhood, whereas just even a couple of years ago, it was pretty high.
When I say the timetable could be stretched, I'm not necessarily looking at the number of homes and the number of people. I'm looking at the actual physical footprint.
As far as patrolling.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Because there's not that much. Could
Right,
there be,
right.
or would there probably be more calls? Sure.
Probably a mile,
It just
miles
makes
worth
sense.
of roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
So, one of the things I did appreciate about this that you put in there, when Joe was asked about extra officers, he said, according to FBI, we need 1 or 2 more. Okay, according to your statistics, we need a third of an officer right now to be at max capacity of where the feds say we should be. So we're really in good shape, I think.
Right.
And so, like I say, if 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we needed to add 1 more guy.
And this goes way beyond what you're here for.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's true. That's true. I know you have an appointment. What time do you need to leave?
My questions in your report are answered.
One last thing that I would point to is maybe page 35. This has to deal with sort of the sequencing of the approvals. This sort of looks at the scenario of decoupling the zoning from the annexation approval, right? So everything else in the fiscal plan assumes that development zoning also gets approved, right? This page looks at what the, sort of as a kind of a plan B, if the annexation is approved, but this specific project zoning request is not approved, what happens? The short answer is nothing, okay? Because it basically is gonna come into the town via the annexation approval. It'll then be set aside as municipally tax exempt. So until the zoning changes, nothing really changes from the tax distributions. So there will be no really incremental revenues, there will be no utility revenues. It'll be essentially exactly as it is, it'll just be within the town's boundary. So there's a lot of words to basically say no impact.
Right. No new expenses, no new revenues. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to, and again, I realize if you need to go, feel free. My questions about your report are answered. I don't know if anybody else has any. But I wanted to get back to something you said. I don't know if there's a way, if it's even possible or legal to say first buyers of these properties, they have to be bought as primary residences. And the reason I say that, we've done a number of developments as a bank. We've financed them. These sorts of dollar ranges, you've got national companies coming in and they come to the builder and say, you take 10 grand off the cost of that house and I'll buy your next 10. The builder's going to do that and they're immediately 10 rentals. I think if this turns into and that's not just here, that's nationwide.
100% agree with you.
If this turns into a major rental project, I think we're all gonna regret it.
Mr. John, tell me if I'm wrong, in our planning commission meeting, they brought that up a little bit, did they
Yes,
not?
they did.
And-
Because that question was posed to them, because I don't know whether, how true it was or not, but there was rumor that when Lennar was building the other one, somehow it got back that that whole thing was being bought by one person to be rentals. And when they were confronted about it, they absolutely said, absolutely not, it will not. So they're aware that we're aware. So,
I trust them, but I don't. I wanted.
I get it.
I wanted.
I get it.
I wanted it.
Well
I
said.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, my pleasure. Just, I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity. I hope the information helps you all make a good informed decision, and appreciate everybody's help, and the staff who's on it have been really exceptional. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, well, I wonder if we can stay on this topic, even though we may be moving away from the fiscal plan a little bit. I kind of want to bring you up to speed on
Yeah.
what has been
Please do.
happening. And I've sent some emails that, in which I've attempted to explain it, but I'm not sure how clear that's come through. So you all know that the developer, Gradison Development, is proposing a planned unit development for this property that is an integrated development that is single-family homes on some lots that are of varying sizes, to John's point, pretty small lots, with a townhome component out at the corner of Whiteland and Sawmill. They presented it. The Plan Commission held a public hearing on October 22nd, and after having gone through that presentation with members of the public here making comment, the Plan Commission members voted by a vote of 4-0, because we only had 4 members there, 4 out of 7. It takes 4 voting together for it to be considered action. They voted to approve it and send it on to you with a favorable recommendation. Because it is a rezoning of the property, that decision ultimately rests with the town council. Your Plan Commission is an advisory commission, a committee, who's tasked with this review responsibility to kind of dig deep into what is being proposed and then send it on to you with a recommendation. Approve it, don't approve it, or you know what, we'll leave it up to you guys. We're just sending it your way. They send it to you with a favorable recommendation. They also have submitted a plat of the subdivision. So it, on one hand, under the zoning ordinance, would be zoned to a PUD. Unique to a PUD is all these architectural standards and lot designs, dimensional requirements that would be overlaid on this development. But there's also the plat, which is the carving up of the property into the 400 and some odd lots that show us how the lots would be situated with the roads flowing through them and where their location would be relative to one another and relative to other features like our wastewater treatment plant and all that kind of stuff. And they have filed it as well, although that didn't get presented that night because they didn't have it done. And I think they could have had it done, but they didn't have it done. And we have been working really hard on trying to pin down the developer on a number of commitments that we would expect them to make and would have the Plan Commission send on to you, sort of a recommendation that you approve it, but subject to a pretty lengthy list of commitments to address some of the concerns that you have raised, some of the concerns that Matt and Dwayne have. We learned after the October 22nd Plan Commission meeting, at which the Plan Commission approved it, that the developer had missed about a dozen property owners on the mailed notices they were supposed to have sent. So everyone that is with 250 feet or 2 properties around that property is entitled to a letter in the mail that says, hey, there's going to be a hearing on this date at this time at this place and you have the right to be there. If they fail to meet that requirement, if they don't send the notice to everybody who's entitled to it, it's defective. I think when you think of it in terms of the legal effect of that, it's as if that hearing didn't take place. So we pointed that out to them. I actually went and made the list for them. I rewrote the notice for them. I sent it to them and said, if you're going to fix this and want to move this forward, send it to these people and send it and string these words together and get it out by this date. So we have 15 days notice, and we'll give you another shot on November 21st. So that's what we're queued up for now. We have to go through that again. I did include in the notice that went to the property owners who got notice the last time that this is being done to correct the defect in the prior notice so that they don't feel like this is something different. I wanted those who came the last time to understand this is the same thing again, not something new that you're not yet aware of, but they're welcome to come if they want to come. So that's going to happen. If the Plan Commission at that meeting approves it and sends a favorable recommendation to you, then it'll find its way here to you at your December meeting. If the Plan Commission acts the way it did the last time, that's what will happen. If the Plan Commission decides, after having taken a look at it again, or we have members of the public here who say things that influence the Plan Commission members to vote differently, it may come here with a different recommendation. Okay, so that's going on there. At the same time, we've got this request to annex the property. So before you or the Plan Commission can actually exercise jurisdiction over the property and make effective a rezoning or a plat approval or conditions that go along with them, we got to put our arms around it and pull it into New Whiteland. And that's what the fiscal plan that you just reviewed and talked about is about. As a condition of you all deciding we want to make this a part of New Whiteland, you have to get one of these fiscal plans, look at it, give it your consideration, and you have to adopt it as a prerequisite to the annexation. That's where we are in the process tonight. You had a public hearing on the annexation some time ago. We have satisfied that statutory requirement. But all of this has to kind of be coupled together. You all can't rezone the property if you don't annex it, right? And so what I had planned on was, okay, they have to go back to the Plan Commission and do the public hearing over again on the zoning, but we can go ahead here with the annexation if you five want to do that, because we've met the requirements for doing that, and we were going to have this presented tonight. What I had anticipated was you would adopt a resolution to adopt a fiscal plan and go ahead and either adopt the annexation or at least introduce it tonight. We've been asked by the developer, by Gradison, with sort of the consent and support of the property owners, to pause the annexation because they would prefer that it not be brought into New Island if they're not going to get the other approvals they're asking for to be able to develop it the way they want. So, what I have tonight for you to act on if you choose to is a resolution to adopt this fiscal plan. I guess I don't know why you wouldn't do that unless you just are opposed to the fiscal plan and don't like the work product that has been given you by Adam Stone. I mean, if you think that what he has presented is credible and serves to inform you on what the impact would be fiscally of this ground coming into New Whiteland, then you can adopt a resolution to adopt this fiscal plan as the fiscal plan for this proposed annexation. That can happen tonight. Doesn't have to, but it can. Kind of anticipate that it would. The other thing I brought is the annexation ordinance that would bring it into town to be introduced but not voted on. It would have to then be voted on. The first opportunity you would have would be at your December meeting, at which you may also be taking action or asked to be taking action on the zoning that the Plan Commission will hear on November 21st. That's where we are procedurally. Okay, and then I want to. So that's on the legislative business. We can wait till then. We can do it now. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I want you to also consider. From an economic standpoint, you can either say what we're gaining economically isn't enough for me to sort of stomach this ground being developed as they're proposing. I don't love the layout, I don't love the lot size, I don't love the product. And if we're not going to get more than that out of it, if our pockets aren't going to be fuller after all of this, then I'd rather just stay at Beanfield. That's fine. That's fine. But if you don't annex it, it remains out in the county. It remains under the jurisdiction of the Johnson County Plan Commission. Gradison, the representatives we deal with at Gradison, have expressed to me as recently as Monday a willingness, I don't know an intent, but a willingness, if you all don't approve this, to go to the county and ask for the county to approve a similar development on this ground that would remain under the county's jurisdiction. The cars are going to dump out on your roads just the same. I don't know what they're going to do about sewers.
That's the question.
Yeah, it is the question.
Right.
And so we think, I get it, that New Whiteland has an ability to block this by saying, go do whatever you want.
Well, what I want to do is hit pause and say, I'm not looking for it to stay at Beanfield. I'm looking for it to look a little different than it looks.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
So I think what you're facing here is, okay, well, I'll just say it this way. I kind of wanted for New Whiteland this annexation to proceed.
Sure.
Because I would like for New Whiteland for this to come under your jurisdiction. I even said to the developer, okay, fine. I tell you what, go on down there, see what you can get done at the county. I don't know how the hell you're going to sewer this thing, but go see what you can get done. And I even said to them, and my prediction is that if New Whiteland does not approve your PUD as you have presented it, you will be better off submitting to New Whiteland some variation on that or some alternate plan that may result in fewer lots that are larger, that appeal more to the community and the town council than what you're ever going to be able to get done down at the county. That you're better off, if this doesn't work, fall back, retool, but come back to New Whiteland and ultimately present something that they will approve. I don't know whether he heard that. I don't know whether he absorbed that. I don't know whether they understand that that's the reality of it or not anyway.
Well, and I've given that a lot of thought personally. We run the risk of saying, no, we won't do this. They go to Whiteland sewers it, and it goes in anyway.
Yeah.
And then,
That's right.
but I would say we don't absorb those expenses. We absorb the cars.
That's right.
But we don't have to hire the police. We don't have to do the other ancillary expenses. But I wonder, with all the growth that Whiteland's had, do they have capacity? I'm not
Well, I
sure.
think not at the moment. I think
Right.
not at the moment.
So that's why, and I'm not saying I want to hold their feet to the fire. What I'm saying personally, and I realize I'm 1 out of 5, is, they've come in here a couple of times and said, this town has no standards at all. No standards at all. That's what they've implied.
Yeah, we're getting tired of hearing that, by the way.
I know, and
you
that's what
guys
I
in
was
this
just gonna
bright
say.
shirt and here.
And that's what I was just going to say.
We got our back up here.
That irritates me. That
Me too.
irritates me. And maybe they should say it once or twice more. But where I'm going with that is we do have standards, and they're 60-foot wide lots.
Yeah.
That's what we have, not 48, not some of these were smaller than that.
I think, John, if we want to be generous and give them the benefit of the doubt on all of that, I cringe hearing it too, and they say too much.
Yeah.
I do think maybe the point is we don't have architectural standards in our ordinance that talk about how the buildings are built and what
And
the
that's
facades
fair.
look like. And all
And
that.
that's fair.
And we don't.
Right.
And we don't need to. But in the modern era, some of these fast developing communities, Avon, Fishers, Carmel,
Bargersville.
Bargersville, they have embedded into their zoning ordinance, some architectural standards that relate to how a structure is actually constructed and what it looks like. He would be better served if not wanting to rub us the wrong way, to make a clearer distinction. I think what he's trying to do is sell to you and to the community that we're doing you a favor, because not only,
Right, and that's got pretty deep.
and to some extent, I get that point, but to your point, we have a zoning ordinance, we have lot sizes, we have setbacks, we're happy with it. We have communities in town that we think we like better because the houses are spaced farther apart, and we don't so love you putting them right on top of one another. So come on into New Whiteland, we'd love to have you, but we're not sure we're going to want it to be developed quite like this. And that's how you can carve this thing up if
And
you
you're
want.
exactly where I am. You know, I look at this and think, this almost feels like this is the first time we've been asked to the dance and we're gonna jump at it. Well, I don't wanna jump at it. I wanna make sure we get something that 15 years from now, we're still gonna like.
So the
I don't
risk.
think this is it.
So the risk is that results in them pulling out. They take the position that if we can't develop this with enough density to be able to sell the number of lots we need to make the return on our investment that we want to make, then we're not going to do this project, and off they go.
Okay, so that's exactly where I wanted to go, and that was the question that I had. Annexation. Property's ours.
Sure.
We still have to approve the subdivision.
Yes.
They can't go
There, we can do contingencies of our own.
Yes, and we've got 15 or 16 of them already queued up that they have agreed to, and they're really pretty good commitments.
Lot size?
No, that's wired into the PUD ordinance itself. It is a commitment wired in there, but they're not the sizes that I think some of you want.
Not the sizes we've said is what we want. But this.
Then why are they in there? I'm sorry, John.
Money. The more lots, the more profit.
Yeah, but we can
Well, that's
control that.
Right.
Well,
and that's what I'm getting
You
at.
do.
Yeah.
You do.
Well,
Lot size has been my concern. Lot size was my concern with the linear. Okay, but they put it to our standards.
well,
It's the risk.
if they say it's not fiscally possible unless we have these small lot sizes, this same developer, these same builders have done neighborhoods just like this all over the place with bigger lots.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is unfair to them, but it doesn't feel like it based on the way they communicate to us. They're looking at us like a ripe plum that they're just gonna come in and pluck.
I work for you, not them. I think if they were here, what you would be hearing from them is, we're building a subdivision around a wastewater treatment plant.
True.
And if you think that some other developer is gonna come in there and turn that vacant ground into a subdivision and make estate-sized homes,
Well, we already
of course
know
not.
that that's.
This is what they'd say.
Yeah.
In order to make this work, given that there's this feature there that we're trying to work around and develop lots around and sell, we've got to be able to squeeze them in, because we can't sell these lots for as much as we might in these other communities where we have large lots, because people aren't going to pay that. Lennar is not going to buy back lots from us. Ryan's not going to buy back lots from us for this amount of money when they're 10 feet away from a wastewater treatment plant. And so our price point is different than it would be now, they're trying to make as much money as they can make. People do that.
Of course they are.
You know,
Of course they are.
I don't know if we got into this more in more detail, whether we rolled up our sleeves and worked harder to say we want you, but we're not going to be able to get behind this.
Yeah.
Well,
and
that maybe is where you are.
And it may be that street that goes past the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, those are small lots, and I get that because they have to sell cheaper. I don't think this whole thing has to be that.
Okay.
I mean, this is significant. That's a fairly small slice of what this neighborhood's gonna be.
One thing too to remember, I know the lot sizes are smaller. If you actually go through and look at the footprint of their biggest houses, you will have, right, if I'm not mistaken, we looked at this, the spacing between the two houses won't be much different than what you currently already have.
Right.
Like in like our well, was it RS1 or RS3 at Lennar and
Three.
things like that. The spacing between the actual houses aren't any different.
Put it on the bottom chart for me. Would it be like the spacing in Raintree or Breakaday?
The easiest way for me to do, I don't know if you've been out to Grassy Manor or Brownstone,
Out on
just
75?
because it's easier for me because it's newer and it's fresh in my head. It would be roughly
They're
like
pretty
that.
tight.
So those were all,
But those are to our standards.
those lots fit our standards. Those lots fit our standards.
Yes, but they're bigger houses.
Right.
Than what's on. That's what I'm trying to say is yes, the lots may be smaller, but so are the houses that are going in on there.
Reach
Right.
out, touch.
Right.
So not trying to change your mind. I
Well, I
didn't
mean,
know
it's
if that
no
was
different.
something you
I live
guys
in
even
Breakaday.
thought
It's
about.
no different
was
than my neighborhood. I
on
mean,
the house size and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I think you all get this. I mean, the risk, the dance you're doing here is you say, well, they say, we are going to pull our request for annexation unless you grant approval of this development. And in which case you can say, okay, we're not granting, so pull it. If you do that, it remains out in the county. Nothing stops them from going to the county and asking for the same development under county jurisdiction. If part of your concern is the aesthetic of it, the fact that it is built on top, the lots are too small, that it's gonna turn out being run down, it's gonna be a rental community, all of the things that are coming to mind that are valid concerns about a community like that, you may end up with it anyway. We know for them to say, fine, if you don't want to play, we'll go play down there. It's not that simple, because the county's got to approve it too. The county, I don't know that they're just going to run over New Whiteland without any regard for what any of us want here. They might, but I don't think they're going to. They have to have sewers, and I think we know now they're not going to get them from Whiteland today. By the time Whiteland can provide them, these folks they're down the road. There's another developer coming over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And by then, I don't know what that looks like, and it may be something much, much, much better. But that's where we are. And what I think that, I think if you're satisfied with this fiscal plan, don't have any problem with adopting it, and we're willing to adopt the resolution tonight, what that would do statutorily is start a clock running on whether they could just decide to pull the annexation or whether the petition they have in place actually remains there. I mean, a window could close where we could move forward with the annexation anyway. And I kind of like the idea that you would do that if you don't have any problems with the fiscal plan.
I don't have any issues with it. I do have a question though. So say we change the number of lots by increasing the lot size, this probably has to be updated, right?
Yeah,
I'm not saying therefore we shouldn't adopt it.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because if you proceeded with the annexation, it would come in RS1.
Which this isn't.
Well, that page 35 that was added
Right.
on Monday.
Does the seller want to be annexed? If this whole thing doesn't happen, do they want to be annexed anyway? I'd be surprised if they did.
Well, I think, at least with regard to one of the properties, they're sort of indifferent, because we have had new legislation. When I say new, it's been a few years now, but when they retooled the annexation legislation the last time, one of the things they changed was if property continues to be assessed as agricultural property, it is exempt from municipal taxation. So, to my mind, all of that property out there, except the one homestead, which is, the size of this building or something, is assessed agricultural. It's not about zoning. It's about how it's assessed.
Right.
So they could come into New Whiteland and they would suffer no tax effect at all.
Yeah.
In that regard, I don't know that they care.
Well, of course, this is very self-serving. I'd be in favor of annexing it, period, if they're willing.
Yeah.
I'm I'm kind of coming around to where I'm thinking I'm not in favor of what they proposed. But again, I'm one vote, I get that. But I do have one other question, and this is me being a penny pincher. When you put the list of all those properties together, you invoicing us or them?
The list of those
The
properties.
properties, you said these are the ones that have to
Yeah.
be notified?
Yeah, that hour was written down and it is on the bill that will come to the town, but I will take it off if you like for me to.
Well,
Here's the thing, I think that it is in the town's interest to move this along. And the other part is too, I suppose that when a list of property owners to whom notices were sent is submitted to the town, that ought to be reviewed and checked. I think it's their risk if they don't do it right. And it was also a way of me confirming
I'm okay.
that proper notice was sent.
I just wanted to let you know
I
that
get
didn't
you.
go past me.
Well, it didn't go past me either.
Okay, we have a short window span here, so
My question is, were we just also just then discussing part 6B, the status of the proposed community ordinance?
Yeah.
We still need to discuss that.
No, we covered that, yeah.
So if we annex it, they can't go to county.
That's correct. Then it is under your jurisdiction. But you can't force the annexation, but you aren't, because they petitioned for it, the owners consented, it's in the pipeline now. They have asked for that not to be done tonight because they're wanting to keep them coupled. But I don't know that there isn't a scenario under which it could still be done, and it would just come in under RS1 rather than as this PUD that is proposed.
Well, if we don't run the annexation tonight, it's got to go through on 2 readings, right?
It does.
Then next month, we would have to waive the
So
rules
to
and read
cue,
it twice.
cue that up to make that
Right.
possible,
I'd rather do
to
that.
me, is to adopt the resolution, adopting the fiscal plan tonight, and introduce the annexation ordinance
right,
tonight.
without
and
a
that's
vote.
it. And if you never act on it, or you act on it in December, or January, or February, all we've done now is satisfy the first requirement of introducing it.
So it
at a
doesn't
meeting.
have to have 2 readings, 2 votes.
I don't think it has to have that vote. It has to be introduced. What
Okay.
we have done customarily is introduced it and voted on it. But as I read the statute, I think that's something that has been done customarily, but I don't get why it needs to be.
Okay. All
I
right.
would simply say that I would ask you to move to introduce ordinance, whatever it is, an ordinance annexing tonight. So now we've satisfied the first step in the 2-step process.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Because I'll make the motion.
Resolution first.
No.
Pieces first.
No, but I, if it makes sense to all of you, I would suggest that a motion be made to adopt resolution 2024-08, which is the resolution adopting the fiscal plan submitted by Stone Municipal Group that you've been discussing this evening.
So there's 2 things dated 2024-08.
Well, one's an ordinance and one's a resolution.
Gotcha, okay.
And this is the resolution
Right.
relating to the fiscal plan.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by John, second by John.
And John, you just need to back off the thing. We'll run this from here. We don't need a president.
Okay, cool. All right, other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? 5 affirmative.
And then, if you're so inclined, I would request a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-08. No, 07. No.
Ordinance 07?
Oh, wait.
Ordinance
That's the ordinance.
2024-08.
Introducing ordinance 2024-08, that would be an ordinance annexing approximately 160 acres at the northwest intersection of Sawmill Road and Whiteland Road.
I'll make that motion also.
Okay.
Motion by John Purdy,
Second.
second by Dennis. And are we voting on that?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
you're voting on the motion,
Yes.
but not on the ordinance.
okay, so we're voting on the motion to
Because the ordinance is
introduce.
next month.
Yes. The actual adoption would be.
The adoption.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Okay.
And let's see, is there anything else
There is,
that you're
John,
on
if
here
you all
for?
don't mind, I've got, so Angela pointed out a couple things that we had. The fire department, they were successful in getting the grant from Duke Energy Foundation, but we have to have somewhere to hold it. We have to build a container to put it in. And so 2024-07 establishes a miscellaneous grant fund and instructs that money be deposited in, administered, and paid out of that fund. And it can also serve as the repository of grant funds that we may get
Any other
going
grants.
forward, except to the extent that there may be a specific requirement that a fund be created for them. But that's what it does.
Federal grants,
Right,
not for federal.
right, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by John Purdy.
Second.
Second by Chad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, 5 affirmative.
and then if you'll see, you have an ordinance 2024-07. So back at the end of last year, Joe Reinerson got hold of me. He'd become aware that the towing contractors that the town contracts with to scoop up cars that are abandoned or are involved in accidents, or, you know, there's an arrest and there's a car left behind, that the towing agencies were willing to pay to the town a $25 fee for each of those. I researched that and found we could do that. I drafted an ordinance back at the end of 2023. Angela got hold of me last week and said we need to have some kind of ordinance or resolution directing that money to go somewhere, and that we wanted it to go in leasing, law enforcement, continuing education, right? And so I went back and thought, well, we did that, found that ordinance, but neither of us can find that it was adopted. So I'm pulling forward the ordinance that was drafted in December of last year that authorizes this $25 fee to be paid and directs it into the leasing fund. And I have included in the ordinance a statement that you are also ratifying and adopting and approving payments that have been made in the past, and this practice of those payments going into that fund. So we're doing what we need to and going back and making it retroactive to last year.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt ordinance?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Chad, did you? Okay. John Shalowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Thank you for all that.
And that one was by unanimous consent just for tonight, so that will not have a second reading.
Okay.
Yeah, we needed it. Yeah, we needed to get that done.
Okay.
And that it is just a bit of hassle.
Is there anything else that you need to
No,
do?
thank you.
'Cause I know
Yeah, I
you
do
need
need to
to
get
go.
out, but I think that
You
covered.
don't need to do the salary ordinance one? We can do that?
I don't need. Yeah, you can just.
Okay.
Y'all adopt it on 2 readings.
Yes, we're doing that.
So you would just just a motion to introduce it tonight and have it placed on the docket for the December meeting. Does that sound? What about you? Do I need to be here for the stuff you guys have? The ARPA funds, you don't need any help with that, right? You can spend that without my help.
And then we've got your things to do. So, okay. If you
Okay.
need to scoot,
Thank you.
good. All right, let's go back up.
Aren't you?
No, I was being sarcastic. But if you're leaving, I'm leaving.
I can't keep
Well,
up.
if he's leaving and John's leaving, then I'm leaving.
I can't.
Well, I
keep
said I
up.
don't want to be here without legal representation.
I'll represent you.
Okay, good. I feel confused.
See you, Lee. Okay, phone system. Matt.
So I know, I believe it was a few months ago, we talked about Ring Central, and switching over from, currently we have used Metronet for our internet phone, all that stuff. This would switch just our phone service over to Ring Central. We would still use Metronet internet. Obviously, the phone would still actually go through the internet. It's voice over IP is what it is. Our current cost for Metronet phone, between all the departments and all that stuff, is $473.71 plus taxes and fees that are in that bill. The savings going through Ring Central takes us to, it would be, or not savings, I guess the monthly bill there would be $392, so there is a little bit of savings there. One of the big things that was brought up to us when Corey from Right Tech brought this up to us was it's something that they, I guess, are a represent or service that. Sometimes it takes us a while to get Metro to fix some of the issues that we have. We have phone issues, things like that. So it was just kind of a way to streamline some more things as well, on top of some of this cost savings. So just asking your guys' thoughts and things like that on that. I know that there is a upfront cost for switching out phones and things like that $3,125.50.
Can I note on that we just got notified that our current phone system is obsolete, so we're gonna have to switch it out anyway? I just
Right.
wanted to note that.
Thank you, I didn't even think about that, yes. We did get that notification from Metronet that we were gonna have to switch all our headsets and desks, phones and all that type of stuff. Something I know in an email that you had sent about, Dwayne and I are going to get rid of the desk phones that we have. We're gonna put the app on the cell phone that we have currently through the town. That gets rid of those too. I hadn't really talked with anybody else department wise.
Well, and maybe I can fill in. So we went to Ring a couple of years ago. And again, it may not be apples to apples because frankly, I don't understand all the technology the bank has. We may not have the same technology, but when my desk phone rings, it rings to my cell phone. My computer actually rings. I can answer it on my computer using the microphone and the speakers in my computer. I don't even use my desk phone. I don't even touch it. I haven't touched it in a year. In fact, I told IT, come get it if you want it. You can use it somewhere else. So where I was going with that is, you've got $2,300, $2,400 in desk sets. But I also realized that had they come to me a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when this was starting and said, you're not going to have a desk phone, I said, the hell I'm not. So that may be where staff is at this point. But I can tell you the way it works for me, again, if somebody called my desk phone right now, this would ring. So with this, I can answer it either way. I can answer it wherever I am. So again, two things with that. Ring Central works very well for the bank. And again, whether or not the technology is identical and will work that same way for the town, I don't know. But the other is, you might look at those desk phones and say, gee, we don't need those, or we don't need half of them.
Well, so I did. I talked with Melissa. Cindy's on vacation this week. I can already tell you, Cindy, she's gonna want that phone. Just knowing her personality. I talked with Melissa. She said she would be willing to try, going through the computer and using, some type of headset or earbuds or something like that. And I even told her, if it comes out that it's something that doesn't seem to work or isn't beneficial, we can always get a desk set.
Right.
I don't know at the fire department. I don't know that really. I think the handset would be something that because
Well, there's some houses, yeah, because, like the police officers have computers,
right,
so we'll have to have some, regular.
right. And this the quote here with the 20 that would encompass currently with everything we have minus the two
Right.
of Dwayne and I's. So
Since you knew about the phones being obsolete, has MetroNet given you any ballpark of, okay, if we need a new system, here's what it's gonna cost?
So that was something else going on. Part of this was when I talked with our rep, he said if we went with something of the same style that we have, we're not really gonna look at it. There's not gonna be any cost. It would just be an exchange. If we wanted to go to better phones, things like that, there really isn't. There would be a cost there. So really, we mentioned that we're going to have to update the phones that we have, but there really isn't a cost if we keep with the same, I guess, classification.
Okay, well, I guess my next question is, the updated phones that you're gonna get from them, which are really the same phones, but they're telling you gotta get them because they're obsolete.
Right.
Quality-wise or user-wise, where are they in comparison to this?
I will be honest, I don't know what MetroNet's offering. I know Corey came in and did a small demo with Cindy and Melissa. Angela wasn't there yet she wasn't in yet whenever we had the meeting with them, just because I knew they were, Cindy and Melissa at the time, they're the ones that are on the phones all the time. But they seem to be to like what Ring Central offered and things like that. But as far as comparing to what MetroNet's going to be offering now, I don't really know.
Where is the 3,500 going to come from?
So that would be, I guess, a question for you my assumption would be is we would spread that 3,500 out however we split all the costs on that. I think it actually goes between utility and town. I think is the only people that pay for it. So I figured we'd split it that way.
Okay.
I have money, I mean, for that cost, I have money in my budget that would cover it, but.
Well, I mean, we are at the middle of November, so we're close enough.
My other equipment line, if that would be considered equipment, I mean, I can do that.
Okay.
So, like I said, the biggest thing to me was trying to look at the cost savings. I know it's not a whole bunch there.
$80.
And then also the service, I think we'll get a better quality service response from Courier and Right Tech than we currently are from MetroNet.
Well, the savings is $80 a month. So you figure that over 12 months, the first year you've got a third of your money back.
Right.
Now,
It's a 3-year contract too.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our money back over the 3 years. Is Corey confident that this equipment, we're not gonna get 2 years down the road, it's like, oh, this is all outdated? Or is this relatively new technology that,
I don't think the voice over IP isn't new technology. That's technically what our MetroNet is voice over IP.
no, I'm talking about the equipment itself.
The equipment, he really didn't say. I would assume, just working with Corey, he usually tries to look out for that type of stuff whenever, he's selling us computers and things like that. I could only assume he would look at the same thing on these phones as well.
Okay.
So.
And you're happy with the system that you guys use?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
And if you decide to do it the way Corey made it sound is when they make that switch, there won't be any dead time between that switch. Phone numbers and all that stuff will all stay the same. Residents, when they make a phone call in, they won't know any difference. But that switch will be fairly simultaneously.
Okay.
So.
Other questions, comments? I want to make a motion to approve the change.
I'll make a motion.
John Purdy made a motion to allow the change.
I will second.
Dennis, other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. Remaining ARPA funds.
So Kelly Robertson was in last Thursday with Friday with Angela, it was Angela going through all the ARPA reporting and various things like that. And they've come up with a tally of what is left of $367,317.74 as of last Friday. Now could be some interest in stuff that comes out over the course of the next several months. But the point of this conversation was several meetings ago, you all had committed to use the remaining ARPA funds for Tracy Road improvements / CCMG match. What I am needing from you tonight, this is from Kelly, so Angela can keep that on there, is that you all put that on record, that is what you were going to use it for. That way it commits those funds to do that. Because of the reporting rules and regulations, you had to have it committed by the end of 2024 and spent by 2026.
That's right.
So doing it that way for those projects, even though they're not completely defined already, that fits the regulations?
That is correct. Okay. That is correct. She just didn't even need to have it necessarily in a motion, but if you guys want to do it by motion, she just needs to have it on record that.
I think that was our intention, so.
As sticky as free money can sometimes be, I'd say we
Yeah.
make a motion
Yeah.
and vote on it, so it's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Because just talking about it and in record are two totally
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
things.
I'll then make a motion that tell me again, we commit those to,
That you commit the remaining ARPA funds of $367,317.74 as of 11/1/2024 to be used for community crossing matching funds / Tracy Road improvements.
Second.
well, let me ask one question. So say something delays those projects. So we have to have it committed by the end of 24 and spent by the end of,
26.
25?
Yes.
what if those
End of
projects?
25?
Yes, I do remember at a meeting that there was, the backup plan was sidewalks. I thought that you mentioned that.
So
Do
there,
we need to mention that, like if something falls through with these, that we need to do the sidewalk?
Right, if that project can't be done next year. then we-
Okay.
and you can do that too. I mean, to have a backup plan, it's a contingency.
Just
Never.
That
because
would-
we have this deadline and we have to promise it by, I mean, because I don't know if we specifically say Tracy Road and CCMG and the next year it ends up having to be sidewalks, then do we?
Mm-hmm. That would make sense.
Infrastructure improvements, there you go.
Okay.
Well, and we could just say it's committed to those three things without saying it's committed so much to each one.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's okay.
Yep.
I think
All right,
that's-
that's my motion.
That's your motion,
I did second.
John Schlotz?
You motion?
Yes.
did.
Okay,
You can just usually write John down,
I know.
okay, and you're gonna be safe on record.
Good chance.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, any other old business? Angela?
No.
Chad?
No.
John? No. Dennis? John?
No.
I'm not asking you to. New business, fire department, chief.
Yep. So I sent you guys an email, and just to clarify, this is actually about our gear washer, not a gear dryer, so.
Oh, sorry.
don't think that. This is the washer that actually washes our turnout gear after fires and everything. And we call it a washer, it's actually an extractor. Has programming in it designed to actually sanitize and remove the carcinogens out of our gear after fire. So it's not just a typical washer you get at Home Depot or whatever. Anyways, ours died a couple weeks ago. We attempted to try to get it repaired. The companies that we've called are not even interested in looking at it because it's about 20 years old. They said even if they can figure out what's wrong with it, they probably can't get the parts. So we started looking into new washers, and we ended up contacting 4 companies that the product they had fit the bill. Only 2 of them replied. I gave you guys those quotes. They are essentially quoting the exact same thing. The terminology is a little different, but it's actually, there's really no difference in what they're quoting us. And the Arnold equipment one was almost $1,000 less. And their customer service has been awesome. Called them up on the phone, it's really great to talk to. So we'd like to go ahead and go with them. They're actually, they have a 7 to 10 day lead time, which is great.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait for months.
Okay.
And we do have the funding. If I move some money around that's left, I can cover the cost out of our budget. So I'm really just looking for your approval just because of the cost.
So we've got 2 quotes. Is this something we need to have a third, or the fact that you
No.
sought
Well,
4
2 didn't
satisfies that?
respond.
So that satisfies that requirement?
Yeah.
Okay. So that'll be documented in the minutes, I suppose, that he, okay,
Yes, I've got that down.
okay,
Forward contacted him to reply.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by John Purdy to use Arnold fire equipment for $84.99.
Mhm.
Okay, and second by Chad.
John.
Okay, he was fast.
Yeah, you can have it if you haven't made.
Second by
record tonight.
Shalotsky.
Okay.
Okay.
I've made
Other-
sure we both made it in. So.
Other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Thank you.
No problem. So you don't have spare time that you could just run to the laundromat with those things? Come on.
They wouldn't be too happy probably.
No.
Darn it, Perrin, we already
We
voted on
actually
it.
Yeah.
Ironically too, Whiteland is, there's a house service right now.
Wow.
We can't even go over there.
Okay. Angela, other new business?
No.
Chad?
No, sir.
John? Dennis? John?
No.
Anybody? Okay, I think the last thing we have is, the salary ordinance.
Yes, so, and John Purdy had a question about that. It's just, this is a housekeeping item that we have to do every year. All municipalities have to do one. So we took whatever was approved in the budget, and then we put it in this ordinance. It's basically the same amounts.
So this was,
Two full requirements to have. And then, tonight, we're just introducing it.
Okay. So do we have a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-09?
I'll make it. What Angie told me was this, and this was my education, this wasn't approved with the budget, but these are exactly the numbers that were in the budget when we
Okay.
looked at it. So yeah, I'll make the motion.
Motion by John Purdy, second by Chad. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5 affirmative. All right, that is everything on this evening's agenda. So at this time, the meeting is open to the public. Thank you for sitting through all this. If you have a question or comment, we ask for your name and address for the record. Did you sit through all this?
I'm just here to be nosy.
That's
Wow.
that's my one.
Wow.
So, there was a
You
lady that
forced.
left, and there was a phone call today, somebody asked if they were allowed to come and talk about some kind of tree being cut. So that's probably,
I can probably explain that if that's who it was, I
I
can
would
explain
assume.
If,
what that was.
honestly, if they're not here, I'd rather we don't get into something that we might be talking about something totally different.
Right, that's true.
So, okay, being no other business, we are adjourned.
Yes, John, my meds are starting to run off, and that's why
We're
the
still
hack,
on video.
Okay.
John?
I don't care. And so,
It's not working.
the hacking and everything.
Is the video not working?
It's not working.
Okay, we were wondering that because we were getting a black screen.
It's
up
not
there.
working. Yeah.
Can you hear voices, do you know?